Every night before Lina goes to bed, Brother Peter always visited Lina's room. No one knew what he always went in there to do, but he spent at least 1 hour in Lina's room before coming out every night. He always carried a small prayer book with him, which made some of the other parishioners wonder even more. Good for nothing child. You are a disgrace to your family. Even if you want to get pregnant, why not find someone else? Must it be a monk? In the peaceful town of Omaha lived a sweet girl named Lina. She was kind and respectful and always had a big smile on her face. Lina was the maid at the local Catholic church where she helped the monks and nuns with their chores. She worked closely with Brother Peter, a gentle and kind monk who had been a father figure to her since she was a little girl. Brother Peter was loved by everyone in the community. He was known for his good heart, his deep faith, and his dedication to God. Lina loved working at the sick parish house. She felt safe there, and the serene atmosphere of the parish brought her peace. As a matter of fact, Lina wanted to become a Reverend sister one day, and Brother Peter always treated her with love. He would often buy her little gifts when he traveled with the other monks, like bracelets, bread, or sweets, bread, or sweets. He sometimes also brought her small wooden crosses, which Lina treasured dearly. Every night, before Lina went to bed, Brother Peter always visited Lina's room. No one knew what he always went in there to do, but he spent at least 1 hour in Lina's room before coming out every night. This brought out curiosity among the other parishioners. They started wondering what was happening. Why is Brother Peter always visiting Lina's room every night? They gossiped and whispered among themselves. Two other young girls who also worked at the parish house were also curious to know what was happening. They said to themselves, I wonder why Brother Peter always gives Lina all the attention. Only Lina eats the bread, the sweets, and the gifts. Now he visits her room every night. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Are you sure they are not in a relationship? Because I don't understand this kind of love. They always gossip. One day, rumors began to spread like wildfire in the town. People were whispering that Lina and Brother Peter were in a secret relationship. The townspeople couldn't believe it. How could a monk who is supposed to be a virgin be having an affair with his servant? They asked. Lina's friends and neighbors started to gossip, saying they had seen the way Brother Peter cared for her and were convinced something must be going on. Lina and Brother Peter defended this rumor, saying they had never had any secret relationship and they would never had any secret relationship and they would never have. Brother Peter also said he was a monk of God and could never involve himself in such a sin. But the people did not believe him. Brother Peter also said that the love he had for Lina was just a fatherly love and that he would never do anything wrong with her. Mama Jo, Lina's mother, called her daughter aside and said to her, Lynn, my daughter, tell me the truth. Are you in a relationship with a reverend brother? And Lina responded, Mama, no, I will never do such a thing. Brother Peter is just like a father to me. You know my father is no longer alive. He's just taking care of me. Mama Jo said, don't worry, my child. People will always talk, but I know you, and I trust you. I also trust Brother Peter. They can say whatever they like. Lina spent a few more days with her mom. On the very day she was supposed to return back to the parish house, she started feeling sick. She was throwing up in the mornings, feeling tired all the time, and her appetite had grown. She was sleeping all the time. Mama Joe, Lina's mother, wondered what was happening with her daughter. Ah, Lin, my child, you've been sick. Let's go to the hospital. You need treatment. And Mama Joe took her daughter to the church clinic to see what was wrong. After so many tests, Mama Joe got the shocking news of her life. Lina was pregnant. She was heartbroken upon hearing this news, and Mama Joe started crying at the church clinic. Brother Peter has killed me. Lina has killed me. Lina, how can you be pregnant? I thought you were a virgin. And Lina responded, Mama, I'm as surprised as you are. I'm a virgin. I have never been with any man before. I cannot be pregnant. But Mama Joe would not listen to what her daughter was saying. Instead, she cut her short and shouted at her, "Good for nothing child! You are a disgrace to your family. Even if you want to get pregnant, why not find someone else? Must it be a monk? See the shame you have brought to your entire family. What did I ever do to you? Did I commit an offense by allowing you to stay in the parish house?" Lina cried, trying to defend the fact that she didn't know how she got pregnant. Mama Joe did not believe her. She took Lina to 4 different hospitals, hoping that the church clinic had made a mistake, but every test came back the same. Lina was pregnant. The news spread quickly through the town. The rumors about Lina and Brother Peter got worse. People pointed fingers, saying that Brother Peter had made Lina pregnant, and that was why they were so close. People started saying, "Whom? We said it that brother is a pretender. That brother is a hypocrite. He's a good for nothing person. He was just pretending to be good. Meanwhile, he was going to bed with Lina. We said it. Now did we not say it?" Rumors were flying up and down. Brother Peter, upon hearing this, did not know what to say. He was buried in anguish and shame. He didn't even know how to start defending himself. Everybody was pointing fingers at him. Even the 2 girls at the parish house now made the whole matter escalate even more, saying they had seen Brother Peter oftentimes coming out of Lina's room in the night, and that they had always wondered why. Brother Peter tried to defend himself, saying he was not responsible and had no hand in it. But no matter what he said, no one believed him, not even the parish council. Lina was devastated. She knew the truth, but no one believed her. She was sent away from the parish house, accused of having an affair with the monk. Brother Peter visited Lina in her house, and they had a meeting. He said to her, "Lin, are you going to have the baby? What will you do with the baby?" And Lina responded, "Brother, I don't know because I am confused." Dear viewers, are you as surprised as I am? Let's keep listening to this story. Before they could continue the conversation, Mama Joe, Lina's mom, came out and poured water on the monk, saying, "Good for nothing man. You have destroyed my daughter's life. Is it not okay? What are you doing here? Leave my compound, useless man. Good for nothing man. I entrusted my daughter to you to teach her the way of God, and all you could do is to get her pregnant." Mama Joe was furious. Brother Peter tried to explain, saying, "Mama, please, I can explain everything." But Mama Joe was not listening. "Explain what? What do you want to explain? I overheard you asking her what she wants to do with the baby. So what explanation do you want to give?" Brother Peter left feeling so devastated. The parish council called Brother Peter, and despite his consistent pleas, that he was still a virgin and had never touched Lina inappropriately. They told him he had to leave the monastery, that he was a disgrace to the Catholic community. Brother Peter begged, pleaded, and cried for mercy, but no one was ready to listen to him. He tried to explain himself, but still he was given a deaf ear. No one was ready to listen to Brother Peter. Brother Peter packed his bag and was leaving the parish. As he was leaving, the parishioners were looking at him in disappointment. Some even went as far as saying to him, "Brother, we are disappointed in you. We trusted you. We respected you as a monk. How could you do this? Go and take care of Lina, since it is what you want. Go and take responsibility for the baby you've put in her." Brother Peter kept on trying to explain, but nobody was ready to listen to him, and he left the parish house in so much pain. Lina cried for days. She couldn't understand what was happening. She was worried about Brother Peter. She thought to herself, "Oh dear Brother Peter, where would he go? How would he start over after dedicating his whole life to the monastery? What do I do?" Brother Peter was the only person that showed me genuine love. Brother Peter was also confused and heartbroken. One day, as Lina was sitting outside her house, deep in thought, Mama Jo, her mother, approached her with a determined look in her eyes. "Lina, we need to find out the truth, my daughter. I know you very well. I gave birth to you. If you are saying the truth, I know. So I'm telling you that I know you're telling the truth. I believe you, but we need proof." Mama Jo decided to take Lina to a specialist hospital in the city where they could perform a detailed examination. After a long and careful examination, the doctors found out something shocking. Lina was indeed showing all the symptoms of pregnancy, but there was no baby. Lina's stomach was growing because she had a rare condition called phantom pregnancy. It's a condition where a woman's body shows all the signs of being pregnant, vomiting, weight gain, and even feeling like there's a baby inside. But in reality, there is no baby. It is a psychological condition often brought out by stress and anxiety. The body believes it's pregnant, and then the symptoms appear real, even when there is no pregnancy. Mama Jo and Lina were stunned but also relieved. They had finally found an explanation that made sense. The doctor gave them a report explaining the condition, and they quickly took it to the church leaders to clear Brother Peter's name. It turned out that Brother Peter and Lina had been accused wrongly indeed. They took the result to the church council. They were shocked but also relieved to know the truth. They called Brother Peter back. They apologized to him and invited him to return to his monastic duties. The rumor spread again like wildfire that Brother Peter was innocent after all. Lina was never pregnant. She was just having symptoms of phantom pregnancy. But they were still curious to know why Brother Peter always visited Lina's room at night in the first place, because that was where the whole rumor started from. And Brother Peter explained that every night before Lina went to bed, they were always praying, and he was always training Lina in the ways of God and how to stay dedicated to him, and also training her in deep faith since she wanted to become a Reverend sister. The parishioners were so sad. They felt so bad for not listening to Brother Peter when he tried to explain himself. They apologized to him, begging him to please come back to their parish. They showered him with gifts. On the day of his return, they celebrated him like a king. Lina was excited and relieved that Brother Peter's name had been cleared. She was also excited for herself because she wasn't pregnant. She was also confused. How can I be pregnant when I didn't meet a man? Lina and Brother Peter were both overjoyed. They hugged and thanked God for revealing the truth. Lina returned to the parish house, where she continued to work and prepare for her dream of becoming a Reverend sister. Brother Peter went back to his duties, grateful to be back in the place he loved and to continue the work of God in his vineyard. This story teaches us an invaluable lesson about the danger of assumptions and the power of truth. It reminds us not to jump to conclusions or spread rumors without understanding the full picture. False accusations can deeply harm innocent people, tarnish reputations, and create unnecessary pain. This is why it is crucial to seek the truth, remain patient, and approach situations with understanding and kindness. Thank you for watching my channel. If you enjoyed this story and learned something meaningful, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to me. See you in the next video. In a village called Nadel, there were so many beautiful women. The village was known for its beautiful women who were very strong and could have many children. Everyone who lived there was proud of this. People from faraway places would come just to see these women and marry them. The village was surrounded by lush green hills, and a river flowed nearby, providing the villagers with fresh water. The children would often play near the riverbanks, and the women would gather to wash clothes and share stories. Among all the girls in Nadel, there was one named Zuri. Zuri was not just beautiful. She was the most beautiful girl in the whole village. Everyone who saw her said, "Wow, look at Zuri. She's so pretty." Her beauty was often compared to the bright morning sun that rose over the hills, casting a golden glow on the village. Zuri lived with her parents and her brother, Malu. They were a small family, just the four of them, but they were very happy. Their parents loved them very much, and they always made sure Zuri and Malu had everything they needed. The village people would often say, "Zuri is such a good girl. She helps her mother at home, and she is kind to everyone." Zuri's beauty wasn't just on the outside. She was also beautiful on the inside. She would often help the elderly villagers by carrying heavy loads or fetching water for them. Everyone in Nadel loved Zuri and her family. They were known for being kind and generous. Life in Nadel was simple and peaceful. The sun always shined brightly, the birds sang sweet songs, and the trees were full of fruits. Zuri and her family enjoyed every moment together, and they were happy in their little village. During the evenings, the villagers would gather around a large bonfire in the center of the village to share stories and sing songs. Zuri loved these gatherings, especially when her father would tell tales of bravery and love. One day, something very sad happened in the village of Nadel. Zuri and Malu's parents, who loved them so much, passed away. It was a very sad time for Zuri and Malu. They were still young and didn't know what to do without their parents. The house that was once filled with laughter became quiet, and the joy in their hearts was replaced with sadness. The neighbors would often come by to bring food and comfort to Zuri and Malu, but nothing could fill the void left by their parents. Zuri and Malu had to be strong. They didn't have anyone else to take care of them, so they decided to take care of each other. Every day, they would work hard. Zuri would go to the market to sell fruits and vegetables, and Malu would help the farmers in the farms. They did everything they could to make sure they had food to eat and clothes to wear. On their way to the market, Zuri and Malu would walk past the village square, where they would see other children playing and laughing, reminding them of the carefree days they once had. Even though life was now harder without their parents, Zuri and Malu grew even closer. They shared everything, from their food to their worries. They would sit under the big tree at the end of the day, talking about their dreams and how they would make their parents proud. Sometimes, Malu would carve small wooden toys for Zuri, and she would weave colorful bracelets for him in return. As the years passed, Zuri grew older. She was no longer the little girl who played in the fields with Malu. Now she was a young woman, and in the village of Nadel, young women were expected to marry. Most of the girls in the village got married when they were 18, but Zuri was already 24 and still hadn't married anyone. Zuri would often visit the riverbank, where she would sit alone, watching the water flow and think about her future. Her relatives began to worry. They would come to her house and say, Zuri, you are getting older. All the girls your age are married with children. Why haven't you found a husband yet? Zuri would smile politely and say, I want to choose the right man. I'm not in a hurry. But the pressure kept growing. Her relatives wouldn't stop reminding her that she needed to get married. They would whisper behind her back, why is Zuri still single? She's so beautiful. What is she waiting for? Zuri tried to ignore their whispers, but deep down it made her feel anxious. Even the villagers began to talk. They would see Zuri in the market and say, Zuri, when will we hear the sound of wedding drums for you? Zuri felt the pressure, but she didn't want to rush into marriage. She wanted to make sure she married the right man, someone who would love and respect her. She found comfort in talking to Malu, who always reassured her that she would find the right person when the time was right. She had been seeing a man named Beko for a while. He was kind and hardworking, and Zuri liked him, but she hadn't decided if he was the one. One day, after another visit from her concerned relatives, Zuri sat down and thought long and hard. She didn't want to be the last unmarried woman in the village. She didn't want people to keep talking behind her back. So she made a decision. Zuri went to Beko and said, Beko, I think it's time for us to get married. Beko smiled and was very happy. He had been waiting for Zuri to say those words. I will make you happy, Zuri, he promised. Zuri hoped that she was making the right decision. And so, the preparations for the wedding began. The whole village was excited because Zuri, the most beautiful girl in Nedel, was finally getting married. The women gathered to prepare food, while the men set up decorations around the village square. The drums would soon beat, and the songs would soon fill the air. Zuri was about to take the next big step in her life, hoping she had made the right choice. Zuri and Beko's wedding was the biggest the village of Nadel had seen in a long time. The drums beat loudly, the songs were sweet, and everyone danced with joy. The whole village came to celebrate Zuri's big day. People whispered, Zuri is finally getting married. It was a day full of happiness and excitement. The children ran around playing games, while the elders sat in the shade, watching the festivities with smiles on their faces. After the wedding, Zuri moved in with Beko and his family. She was determined to be the best wife she could be. Every morning, Zuri woke up early to fetch water and prepare food for the family. She cleaned the house until it sparkled and helped Beko's mother with anything she needed. Beko's family was pleased with Zuri. Beko's mother would say, Zuri, you are such a good wife. We are lucky to have you. And Zuri would smile, feeling proud of herself. But as time passed, something began to worry Biko's mother. 2 years had gone by since the wedding, and Zuri still hadn't had a child. In Adel, children were very important, and a wife was expected to have them soon after marriage. Beko's mother started to worry and wonder why Zuri hadn't become pregnant. She would often watch Zuri as she worked, her eyes filled with concern. One day, Biko's mother asked Zuri, Zuri, is everything okay? It's been 2 years and there's still no child. What's wrong? Zuri felt sad and unsure. She didn't know why she hadn't gotten pregnant. She wanted a child as much as Biko's mother did, but nothing seemed to be happening. I don't know, Mama, Zuri replied quietly. We are trying, but nothing is happening. Biko's mother sighed and patted Zuri's hand, but the worry in her eyes remained. Beko's mother frowned and thought deeply. She loved Zuri, but she was worried about the future. She wanted grandchildren to carry on the family name. Every time she looked at Zuri, she would sigh and shake her head, wondering what the problem could be. Beko, too, began to feel the pressure, but he tried to reassure Zuri, telling her that things would work out in time. Zuri noticed that Beko's mother was becoming more distant and worried. The house that was once filled with laughter and joy was now quiet with concern. Zuri continued to do all her chores and help around the house, but inside, she felt the weight of not being able to give Biko and his family a child. She would often cry silently at child. She would often cry silently at night, not wanting anyone to see her pain. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, but still there was no baby. Zuri began to worry too. She prayed every night hoping for a miracle, but deep down she feared what might happen if she couldn't have a child. She would go to the river and sit on the rocks, watching the water flow, trying to find some peace in the midst of her worries. As the months passed and still no child came, Beko's mother grew more anxious. She couldn't wait any longer. She needed to know if the problem was with Zuri or Beko, so she came up with a secret plan. One day, when Zuri was away, Beko's mother brought another woman into their home. This woman was young and beautiful, and Beko's mother had chosen her because she was sure she could have a child. She spoke to Beko privately and said, My son, I want you to be with this woman just for a little while. We need to know if you can father a child. Beko was surprised and didn't know what to say, but he trusted his mother. Reluctantly, he agreed to her plan. A few weeks later, the woman came back with news. She was pregnant. Beko was shocked and his mother was overjoyed. It was clear now that Beko was not the problem. Beko felt a mix of emotions, relief, guilt, and fear of what this meant for Zuri. When Zuri returned home, she could feel that something had changed. The air was heavy with tension. Beko's mother called her aside and said, Zuri, it's time for you to leave. You cannot have a child, and that means you cannot stay here as my son's wife. There's no place in this house for a woman who cannot give us children. Beko stood silently, unable to meet Zuri's eyes. Zuri's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She felt ashamed and helpless. She had tried her best, but it wasn't enough. With tears in her eyes, Zuri packed her things and left the house that had been her home for the past 2 years. She walked slowly back to her brother Malu's house, feeling the weight of shame on her shoulders. The villagers watched her as she passed by, whispering to each other, Poor Zuri, She couldn't give Beko a child. When Zuri reached Malu's house, he opened the door and saw his sister standing there, looking lost and broken. Without saying a word, Malu hugged Zuri tightly. He didn't need to ask what had happened. He could see the pain in her eyes. He led her inside, made her sit down, and brought her a cup of warm tea. "You are home now, Zuri," he said softly. "You will always have a place here." Zuri stayed with her brother, but she felt like a shadow of her former self. The laughter that once filled her life was gone. She tried to be strong, but the shame of being sent away for not having a child was too much to bear. All she could think about was how she had failed as a wife, and she wondered if she would ever find happiness again. Malu would often sit with her in the evenings, trying to cheer her up by telling her stories of their childhood adventures. Zuri spent many months at her brother Malu's house, feeling sad and alone. She thought she would never marry again, but her relatives didn't give up on her. They believed that Zuri wasn't the problem and that she could still have a child. They would visit her and say, "Zuri, you are still young and beautiful. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. You should try to marry again." They would bring her small gifts, flowers, fruits, or handmade trinkets to show their support. At first, Zuri didn't want to listen. She was too afraid of being hurt again. But her relatives kept encouraging her, saying, "Maybe Biko wasn't the right one for you. You deserve another chance at happiness." Slowly, their words began to sink in, and Zuri started to feel a glimmer of hope. One day, a man from a faraway village came to Nadel. His name was Jara, and he was very handsome. He had heard about the beauty and kindness of the women in Nadel and decided to come and find a wife. When he saw Zuri, he was captivated by her beauty and gentle nature. Jara watched her as she helped an elderly woman carry her basket at the market, and he knew she was special. Jara approached Zuri and asked her to be his wife. Zuri was hesitant at first, but Jara was kind and patient. He promised to take care of her and make her happy. After much thought, and with the support of her relatives, Zuri agreed to marry Jara. Malu was happy for his sister and gave his blessing, reminding her that she deserved all the happiness in the world. They had a simple but joyful wedding, and Zuri moved to Jara's village, hoping for a fresh start. The villagers welcomed her warmly, and she felt hopeful once again. In Jara's village, Zuri tried her best to be a good wife, just as she had done before. She helped around the house, cooked delicious meals, and treated Jara's parents with respect. Jara's parents were pleased with her and often said, "Zuri is a wonderful wife. We are lucky to have her in our family." Jara would often take Zuri for walks around the village, showing her the fields and the nearby hills. But as the months passed, the same worry began to creep into their home. A year had gone by, and still there was no child. Jara started to grow anxious. He had come all the way to Nadel to find a wife who could give him children, but now it seemed that Zuri could not. The once cheerful evenings were now filled with silence, and Zuri could feel Jara's growing concern. One evening, Jara sat down with Zuri and said, "Zuri, it's been a year, and we still don't have a child. I am very worried. I need a family, and without children, our marriage feels empty." Zuri's heart sank. She had feared this moment, and now it was happening again. She didn't know what to say. She tried to hold back her tears as she replied, Jara, I'm trying my best, but I don't know why this is happening. Jara sighed deeply and said, I'm sorry, Zuri, but I cannot wait any longer. I need to have children, and if you cannot give them to me, then I must find someone who can. His words cut through Zuri like a knife, and she felt her heart breaking once again. And so, Jara made the difficult decision to send Zuri away. With a heavy heart, Zuri packed her things once again and left the home she had tried so hard to make her own. She returned to her brother Malu's house, feeling even more broken than before. Malu welcomed her back with open arms, and this time he promised himself he would do everything he could to help his sister find peace. Back in Nadel, Zuri felt like a failure. She had been married twice, and both times she had been sent away because she couldn't have a child. The villagers whispered behind her back, Poor Zuri, she's been unlucky again. The whispers were like a constant reminder of her pain, and Zuri didn't know what to do. She felt lost and wondered if she would ever find her happiness, or if she was destined to be alone forever. Zuri was now back in her brother Malu's house, and her heart was heavy with sorrow. She couldn't understand why she couldn't have a child. Desperation filled her days and nights. She wanted to find a solution, so she began to visit healers from different villages. Each healer she met promised her that she would have a child, but no matter what they did, nothing changed. Zuri felt more lost with each passing day. She prayed, she hoped, but deep down she was afraid that nothing would work. She would often sit by the river, her feet dangling in the cool water, silently pleading for a miracle. Then one day, someone told her about a wise old woman who lived in a small hut deep in the forest. People said this woman had special knowledge and could see things others couldn't. Zuri decided to visit her, hoping that this wise woman might have the answers she was searching for. She packed a small bag with food and water and set off early in the morning, determined to find the wise woman. When Zuri arrived at the wise woman's hut, she was greeted by a small old woman with kind eyes. The woman invited Zuri inside and listened quietly as Zuri poured out her heart. She told the wise woman about her two failed marriages, her deep longing for a child, and her growing fear that she would never become a mother. The wise woman nodded slowly, and after a long silence, she spoke in a gentle voice. Zuri, your struggle is not because of anything you have done. Long ago, when you were just a little girl, your parents did something to protect you. Zuri looked at the wise woman, confused. What do you mean? She asked. The wise woman continued, Your parents were very worried that, because of your beauty, you might fall into trouble and get pregnant before you were married. So they locked your womb with a powerful spell to keep you safe. They believed they were protecting your future. Zuri's eyes widened in shock. Locked my womb. Is that why I can't have a child? She asked, her voice trembling. The wise woman nodded. Yes, Zuri, the lock on your womb is what has kept you from becoming pregnant. But there is a way to unlock it. Zuri leaned forward, desperate to hear the solution. Tell me, please, what must I do? She begged. The wise woman hesitated for a moment before she spoke again. The lock can only be broken if you sleep with someone who shares your blood. Your parents didn't intend for this, but the spell they used was very strong. The only person who can unlock your womb is your brother, Malu. Zuri felt her heart stop. My brother, she whispered in disbelief. The idea was shocking, unthinkable. There must be another way, she cried. The wise woman shook her head sadly. I'm afraid there isn't, Zuri. The spell is powerful, and only by sharing blood in this way can the lock be broken. Zuri sat in silence, her mind racing. She couldn't imagine doing such a thing, but the thought of never having a child was too much to bear. She felt trapped, torn between the desire to become a mother and the horror of what she would have to do to make that happen. The wise woman saw the pain in Zuri's eyes and said softly, I know this is difficult, Zuri. You must think carefully before you make any decision, but know that this is the truth. Zuri left the wise woman's hut, her heart heavy with the burden of what she had learned. She didn't know what to do. The path ahead was dark and filled with impossible choices. As she walked back to her brother's house, she knew that her life would never be the same again. Zuri returned home from the wise woman's hut, her mind in turmoil. The thought of sleeping with her brother Malu to unlock her womb was something she couldn't accept. It felt wrong, but the fear of never having a child haunted her. She sought out other healers, hoping for a different solution, but nothing worked. Each time she returned from a healer with no answers, she felt her hope slipping further away. The villagers began to notice her frequent trips, and whispers about Zuri's desperation started to spread. Desperate, Zuri entered 2 more marriages, but each ended the same way. No children, and her husband sent her away. The villagers whispered that Zuri was cursed. The constant gossip weighed heavily on Zuri. She was 34, and her dream of becoming a mother seemed impossible. The wise woman's words echoed in her mind, growing stronger each day. But how could she ask Malu, her brother and protector, to do such a thing? Zuri struggled with a dilemma, feeling trapped between her desire for a child and the horror of what it would take to achieve it. She would often sit by the river, watching the sun set behind the hills, trying to find the courage to make a decision. The sound of the flowing water brought her a small sense of peace, but it wasn't enough to ease the turmoil inside her. As time passed, her desperation grew, and she knew she had to make a decision soon, even though it would change her life forever. After many heartbreaks, Zuri had nearly lost hope of finding happiness. Then she met Kito, a wealthy man from the city. Kito, seeking a wife who could give him many children, was drawn to Zuri's beauty and grace. Unaware of her struggles, Zuri was flattered by Kito's attention, but fear gnawed at her. She knew he wanted children, and she couldn't give him that. Yet, the prospect of marrying a rich man from the city and being admired was too tempting to resist. She longed for a new beginning, a chance to leave behind the whispers and judgment of her village. When Kito proposed, Zuri said yes, hoping that maybe this time would be different. But as the wedding day approached, her fear grew. She would wake up in the middle of the night, her heart pounding, terrified of what the future held. She knew that once they were married, it wouldn't be long before Kito realized the truth. She couldn't bear the thought of being sent away again, of being humiliated in front of the entire village. The wise woman's words haunted her more than ever, and she began to believe that there was only one way to avoid disaster. Zuri made a terrible decision. She decided that on the night of her wedding, Before leaving the village with Kito for the city, she would have to sleep with Malu. It was the only way to break the lock on her womb, the only way to ensure that she could give Kito the children he so desperately wanted. The thought of doing such a thing filled Zuri with shame and dread, but she felt trapped. I don't want to do this, she whispered to herself over and over again. But I have no choice. I must have a child or I will lose everything. On the day of the wedding, the village of Nadel was filled with joy. It was the biggest celebration they had seen in years. People from all around came to witness the union of Zuri and Kito. The music played, the dancers danced, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of flowers. Zuri wore a beautiful gown adorned with intricate beadwork, and her hair was styled with fresh flowers woven into braids. But despite the beauty around her, Zuri could barely enjoy the festivities. Her mind was consumed with fear and guilt. She knew that as soon as the celebrations were over, she would have to go through with her plan. She would have to find a way to be alone with Malu, to convince him to do the unthinkable. As the sun began to set and the wedding day came to an end, Zuri made an excuse to leave the celebration early. She told everyone that she had forgotten something important at Malu's house and needed to go back quickly. No one suspected anything, and they let her go without question. The villagers continued celebrating, unaware of the storm brewing inside Zuri's heart. Zuri's heart pounded in her chest as she made her way to Malu's house. She knew what she was about to do would change everything, but she felt like she had no other choice. She was caught between her fear of losing Kito and the horror of what she was about to ask her brother to do. The night was dark as Zuri approached Malu's house, her heart heavy with fear and shame. She knew she had to go through with her plan. Her hands shook as she opened the door. Inside, Malu was surprised to see her. What are you doing here, Zuri? Malu asked, smiling. Shouldn't you be with Kito? Zuri forced a smile and replied, I just wanted to say goodbye before I leave with Kito. Malu, unaware of the turmoil in Zuri's heart, nodded and welcomed her in. They sat together, talking about the old days, but Zuri could barely focus. Her mind was racing, and the guilt was eating away at her. She knew she had to act soon, but every moment she hesitated made her feel sicker inside. Finally, Zuri could bear it no longer. She stood up and walked over to Malu, her hands trembling. Malu, she whispered, I need your help in a way that I can't explain. Malu looked at her, confused. What do you mean, Zuri? What's wrong? With tears in her eyes, Zuri began to tell him about the wise woman's words. She explained how their parents had locked her womb to protect her and how the only way to unlock it was to be with someone who shared her blood. Malu, she pleaded, I know this is wrong, but I'm desperate. If I don't do this, I will never have a child and I will lose everything. Please, I need you to help me. Malu's face turned pale as he realized what Zuri was asking. He shook his head, backing away from her. Zuri, no, this is wrong. You're my sister. I can't do this. I won't do this. But Zuri was desperate. She reached out to him, trying to convince him, tears streaming down her face. Please, Malu, you're the only one who can help me. I don't want to do this, but I have no other choice. Please, don't leave me like this. Malu was horrified. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Zuri, stop. I can't. This is wrong. And you know it. I love you, but not like this. Please, don't make me do this. Just then, the door to the room opened and Malu's wife walked in. She froze in shock, seeing Zuri clinging to her husband, her dress disheveled and her face full of desperation. What is going on here? She cried, her voice trembling with anger and confusion. Malu quickly pulled away from Zuri, trying to explain. It's not what it looks like. Zuri, she, she needs help, but not like this. But Malu's wife was already running out of the house, shouting for the villagers. Come quickly. Something terrible is happening. Come and see within moments. The entire village was awake, gathering outside Malu's house. The air was filled with whispers and shocked gasps as people tried to understand what was going on. The village elders arrived, demanding to know the truth. Zuri, realizing that there was no way to hide what had happened, fell to her knees and began to weep. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. I didn't want this, but I didn't know what else to do. Through her tears, Zuri confessed everything. She told them about the wise woman's words, about how her parents had locked her womb to protect her, and about the terrible advice that led her to believe that only by being with her brother could she break the curse. She admitted that she had lied to Kito, pretending she could give him children, even though she knew the truth. The villagers listened in stunned silence, their faces filled with pity, anger, and sorrow. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Some of them whispered to each other, how could this happen? Poor Zuri, driven to such desperation. The elders, after hearing Zuri's confession, turned to Kito, who stood among the crowd, his face pale and his eyes wide with shock. They asked him what he wanted to do now that he knew the truth. Kito was silent for a long time, his heart heavy with betrayal and disappointment. He had loved Zuri, or at least the person he thought she was. Now everything was ruined. He didn't know if he could ever forgive her, but he also couldn't ignore the deep sadness in her eyes. After what felt like an eternity, Kito finally spoke, his voice low and filled with pain. If Zuri believes this is the only way to break the curse, then I will not stand in the way. But this is not how I imagined our life together. I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again. The elders nodded, understanding the difficulty of the situation. They decided that if Malu agreed, the curse could be broken that night. But they also knew that Zuri's actions had already caused a deep wound in the village, one that would take a long time to heal. Malu, his heart torn apart by what had happened, looked at Zuri with tears in his eyes. He loved his sister, but he never imagined their bond would be tested in such a terrible way. After a long moment, he finally agreed, though it broke his heart to do so. That night, before Zuri left for the city with Kito, she and Malu did what was necessary to break the curse. It was a night filled with sorrow and shame, and though the curse was lifted, the memory of that night would haunt them both forever. When it was over, Malu left the hut, unable to bear the weight of what had happened. The next morning, he packed his belongings and, with his wife by his side, left the village of Nadel, never to return. Zuri too, now free from the curse, left with Kito for the city, but she carried with her the memory of that night and the heavy price she had paid to fulfill her deepest wish. Soon after Zuri and Kito moved to the city, Zuri discovered she was pregnant, and the news brought joy and relief. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Madi, named in honor of her brother Malu. Though Madi was Malu's child, Kito accepted her as his own, and their family grew with the birth of twins, a boy and a girl. Zuri and Kito built a happy life, filled with love and laughter. They became known for their kindness, and their home was always welcoming. The villagers of Nadel were glad to hear that Zuri had finally found peace. Kito often spoke fondly of their children, and Zuri made sure that Madi knew about her uncle Malu and the sacrifice he had made for her to be born. Malu was now settled in a distant village where no one knew their story. Though he never returned, Malu found some peace in his new life, carrying the memory of his sister close to his heart. He often spent his evenings sitting by the river, thinking about the past and hoping that Zuri had found the happiness she deserved. Zuri, though missing her brother, understood why he left. She made sure her children knew the depth of Malu's love and the sacrifice he made. In the end, Zuri and Kito lived happily, surrounded by their children, while Malu, far away, found solace in his quiet life, knowing he had played a part in Zuri's happiness. Thank you for joining me on Zuri's journey, a tale of resilience, sacrifice, and hope. Despite heartbreak and unimaginable challenges, Zuri found her happiness, with her brother Malu's love playing an irreplaceable role. This story reminds us that family bonds can endure even the toughest tests, and true happiness often comes after great trials. Stay tuned for more stories of hope and inspiration. Until next time.